In the bustling halls of a veterinary clinic, Dr. Vanessa Bennett's ordinary day takes an unsettling turn when Sarah walks in with her golden retriever, Max. Behind Sarah's trembling hands and quiet demeanor lies a story of silent suffering, one that her faithful companion, Max, seems to understand all too well. As Vanessa's trained eye catches the subtle signs of Sarah's distress and the controlling presence of Chris, she realizes that this routine checkup might be about more than just Max's health. Before we dive into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life stories. Dr. Vanessa Bennett tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear as she studied the chart in her hands. The familiar sounds of healing paws veterinary clinics surrounded her. The gentle whir of equipment, the occasional bark or meow, and the constant hum of conversation from the waiting room. It was just another Tuesday morning, or at least that's how it seemed. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm happy to report that Luna's blood work looks perfect," Vanessa said warmly, scratching behind the ears of the sleek black cat purring on her examination table. "The medication is working exactly as we hoped." Elena Rodriguez beamed, gathering her beloved cat into her arms. "Oh, thank goodness. I've been so worried about her appetite." "That's what we're here for," Vanessa replied, her dark eyes twinkling. "Just keep up with the prescribed doses, and I'll see you both back in 2 weeks for a follow-up." As Elena gathered her things, Tasha, Vanessa's assistant, poked her head into the exam room. "Dr. Bennett, your next appointment is here. A golden retriever named Max." "Thanks, Tasha. I'll be right there." Vanessa turned back to Elena. "Remember, call us if you notice any changes in Luna's behavior." After saying goodbye to Elena and Luna, Vanessa paused at the small sink to wash her hands, taking a moment to observe her reflection in the mirror. At 32, she'd been running her own practice for 5 years now, and days like today reminded her why she'd chosen this path. There was something deeply satisfying about helping both animals and their humans, about being the kind of doctor who took the time to truly listen. The waiting room was busy, as usual, when Vanessa stepped out. Mrs. Chun was waiting with her hyperactive pug, while Mr. Wilson sat patiently with his elderly tabby cat. But it was the couple near the corner that immediately caught her attention. A woman with a beautiful golden retriever and a man standing uncomfortably close behind her. The woman's face was pale, almost ghostly, and her hands trembled as she filled out the intake form. The golden retriever, Max, Vanessa presumed, sat perfectly still beside her, his behavior notably subdued for his breed. What struck Vanessa most was how the dog kept looking up at his owner, as if checking on her. "Sarah Miller?" Tasha called out, consulting her clipboard. The woman startled at her name, the pen slipping from her fingers and clattering to the floor. Before she could reach for it, the man behind her, his name tag read Visitor, Chris, grabbed her shoulder. Vanessa didn't miss how Sarah flinched at his touch, a slight but telling movement. "That's us," Chris announced, his voice carrying an edge that seemed out of place in the cheerful waiting room. "About time. We've been waiting for 15 minutes. Vanessa exchanged a quick glance with Tasha, who had been with her long enough to read her subtle signals. Something about this situation felt off. "Good morning," Vanessa said warmly, approaching the couple. "I'm Dr. Bennett, but please call me Vanessa. And this must be Max." She knelt down to the dog's level, noting how he remained pressed against Sarah's leg instead of coming forward to greet her. Unusual behavior for a golden. "He's been throwing up," Chris interrupted before Sarah could speak. "Just give him something for it so we can go." "Of course, we'll take good care of Max," Vanessa assured them, maintaining her professional demeanor despite her growing unease. "Sarah, would you like to come back with us to the exam room?" Sarah's eyes darted between Chris and Vanessa, a flicker of something crossing her face. "Yes," she whispered, then quickly added, "Chris comes too." "Of course," Vanessa nodded, though her instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. She led them down the hallway to exam room 3, noting how Sarah's steps were hesitant, almost shuffling. Behind them, Tasha busied herself with paperwork at the front desk, but Vanessa knew her assistant was watching carefully. They'd worked together long enough to develop an almost telepathic understanding, and right now, they were both on high alert. The exam room was bright and cheerful, with colorful posters of dogs and cats adorning the walls. Vanessa had deliberately designed her clinic to feel welcoming, with warm yellow walls and comfortable seating. But today, the room felt charged with an uncomfortable energy. "Let's get Max up on the table for examination," Vanessa suggested, patting the padded surface. "Sarah, would you like to help him up?" Before Sarah could move, Chris stepped forward. "I'll do it." He roughly grabbed Max's collar, but the dog resisted, staying firmly by Sarah's side. "It's okay." Sarah spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "He'll come up for me." She gently guided Max toward the table, and the dog complied immediately, though his eyes never left her face. Vanessa began her examination, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "How long has Max been vomiting?" "2 days," Chris answered sharply. "Sarah?" Vanessa prompted gently, deliberately directing the question to her. "Have you noticed any changes in Max's eating habits?" Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Chris cut her off again. "I already told you, 2 days. Are you deaf?" "Sir," Vanessa said firmly, maintaining her professional tone, "it's important that I get a complete history from the primary caregiver. Different people in the household might notice different things." She watched as Sarah's hand moved to stroke Max's fur, her fingers trembling slightly. The golden retriever responded by leaning into her touch, offering silent comfort. It was fascinating to Vanessa how dogs could sense emotional distress, and concerning how much distress Max seemed to be sensing from Sarah. "He's been drinking more water," Sarah managed to say, her voice gaining a hint of strength when talking about her dog. "And he seems more tired than usual." Chris shifted impatiently behind them. "This is taking too long. Just give him some medicine." "I need to be thorough to provide the best care for Max," Vanessa explained, continuing her examination. She noticed how Sarah's shoulders tensed every time Chris spoke, how she seemed to make herself smaller in his presence. As Vanessa checked Max's ears and eyes, she maintained a steady stream of gentle conversation with Sarah, asking about Max's routine and his favorite activities. It was partly to gather necessary information, but also to give Sarah a chance to speak freely. With each question, Sarah seemed to relax slightly, though she still frequently glanced at Chris. "He loves the park," Sarah shared, a ghost of a smile crossing her face. "Especially the duck pond." "Enough about the damn park," Chris snapped. "Are you almost done?" Vanessa felt Max stiffen under her hands, the dog's attention shifting to Chris. Though he remained quiet, there was a protective alertness in his posture that spoke volumes. Beside him, Sarah's hand had begun trembling again. Tasha appeared in the doorway with some paperwork, her timing perfect as always. "Dr. Bennett, could you sign these forms when you have a moment?" "Of course," Vanessa replied, recognizing their practice signal for, "I'm keeping an eye on things." She turned back to her examination, noting how Sarah's eyes had followed Tasha with something like desperation. The rest of the examination proceeded with the same uncomfortable tension. Every time Sarah began to speak freely about Max, Chris would interrupt or make an impatient noise. Every time Chris moved, Sarah flinched. And through it all, Max remained unusually subdued, but watchful, his body always oriented towards Sarah. Vanessa had seen many things in her years as a veterinarian. She'd treated pets from happy homes and abandoned animals, worked with caring owners and neglectful ones. But something about this situation felt different, more dangerous. The way Chris loomed over Sarah, the way she seemed to shrink in his presence, the way Max positioned himself protectively, it all painted a disturbing picture. As she completed her examination, Vanessa's mind was already working through possibilities. She needed to find a way to speak with Sarah alone, but Chris's controlling presence made that challenging. She could see Tasha hovering nearby, clearly sharing her concerns. This wasn't just about a dog with an upset stomach anymore. Something was very wrong in this exam room, and Vanessa had a feeling that Max's symptoms might be the least of their concerns. As she prepared to discuss her findings, she carefully considered her next moves. Whatever was happening here, she knew she needed to proceed with caution. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Vanessa made notes in Max's chart, using the moment to gather her thoughts. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her shoulders, reminding her that sometimes being a veterinarian meant seeing beyond the animal to recognize when their humans might be in trouble too. Beside her, Max let out a soft whine, pressing closer to Sarah. The woman's hand immediately went to his head, seeking comfort in his presence. In that moment, Vanessa realized that Max might be more than just a pet. He might be Sarah's lifeline. "All right," Vanessa said, turning to face them with careful composure. "I'd like to run a few tests to rule out any serious conditions. It might take a little while." "We don't have time for that," Chris interrupted, taking a step forward. "Just give him some medicine, and we'll go." Sarah's fingers tightened in Max's fur, and the dog responded by pressing even closer to her leg. Vanessa noticed how his eyes tracked Chris's every movement, despite maintaining his calm demeanor. "I understand you're in a hurry," Vanessa said firmly, "but proper diagnosis is crucial for effective treatment. We wouldn't want to miss something important." She watched as Sarah's eyes darted between her and Chris, something desperate flickering in their depths. There was a story here, one that wasn't being told, and Vanessa had a sinking feeling that it was far more serious than a dog with an upset stomach. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking each tense moment as Vanessa waited for a response. In the background, she could hear the normal sounds of the clinic. Phones ringing, the gentle murmur of voices, the occasional bark. But in this room, the silence was deafening. Finally, Chris spoke, his voice tight with barely contained anger. "Fine. Do your tests. But make it quick." Vanessa nodded, maintaining her professional demeanor despite her growing concern. "Sarah, while we prepare for the tests, would you like some water? Our waiting room is quite comfortable." Before Sarah could answer, Chris's hand clamped down on her shoulder. "She's fine here." Vanessa watched as Sarah seemed to shrink under his touch, while Max shifted slightly, positioning himself between them. The dog's behavior was becoming increasingly telling. Not aggressive, but decidedly protective. Through it all, Tasha had been finding reasons to pass by the exam room, her presence a subtle reminder that they weren't alone. Each time she appeared, Vanessa could see her assistant's worried glances, matching her own growing concern about the situation. As Vanessa prepared to step out for the testing supplies, she caught Sarah's "I won last time." In that brief moment, she saw something that made her heart race, a silent plea for help, desperate and afraid. Whatever was happening here went far beyond veterinary medicine, and Vanessa knew she needed to find a way to help. As Vanessa left the exam room, she knew this day would be anything but routine. Something was very wrong, and she had a feeling that what happened next could change or save lives. Just as Vanessa was preparing the testing supplies, a sharp electronic ring cut through the tension. Chris pulled his phone from his pocket, glancing at the screen with obvious irritation. "I have to take this," he growled, then jabbed a finger towards Sarah. "Stay here." His eyes lingered threateningly on her for a moment before he stepped into the hallway, his voice becoming a muffled rumble through the closed door. The moment Chris disappeared, something changed in Sarah's demeanor. Her movements were lightning quick but desperate as she frantically dug through her purse, her trembling hands eventually emerging with a crumpled receipt and a pen that had seen better days. Max shifted closer to the door, his ears pricked forward, clearly monitoring Chris's location. The dog's behavior confirmed what Vanessa had suspected. He wasn't just a pet, but a protector, acutely aware of the danger his owner faced. Sarah's hand shook so violently she could barely write, but her message was clear despite the uneven letters. "Please call 911. He has a gun. Don't let him know." The words seemed to scream from the paper, each one filled with terror and desperate hope. Through the door, Chris's voice rose slightly. "I don't care what it takes. Just get it done." The anger in his tone made Sarah jump, and she quickly crumpled the paper into a tight ball, clutching it in her fist as though her life depended on it. Vanessa kept her focus on Max's examination, maintaining an appearance of normalcy while her mind raced. She could hear Chris's pacing outside the door, his footsteps like a countdown timer. "Max's heart rate seems a bit elevated," Vanessa commented casually, positioning herself closer to Sarah. "I just need to listen again to be sure." Sarah seized the opportunity. As Vanessa leaned in with her stethoscope, Sarah's hand moved with surprising stealth, slipping the crumpled note into the pocket of Vanessa's white coat. The movement was so smooth, so well planned, that Vanessa realized Sarah must have been waiting for this chance, perhaps for hours or even days. The weight of the paper felt like a stone in Vanessa's pocket, but she kept her expression neutral, continuing her examination as if nothing had happened. Years of maintaining composure in emergency situations served her well now. Her hands remained steady as she checked Max's ears again, though her heart was pounding. The door opened with a bang that made everyone jump. Chris stormed back in, his face flushed with anger from his phone call. "Well," he demanded, "are we done here?" Sarah's breathing quickened, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she looked between Chris and Vanessa. There was raw fear in her eyes now, but also a glimmer of hope. Hope that her message would be understood, that help would come. Vanessa met Sarah's gaze for just a fraction of a second, giving her the smallest of nods. The silent communication lasted only a moment, but it carried the weight of a promise. "I understand. I'll help you. I need to get some vaccines from our pharmacy," Vanessa said calmly, though her mind was screaming with the urgency of the situation. "Max is due for a few updates, and it would be good to address those while you're here." Chris's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "You didn't mention vaccines before. It's standard procedure to check records during examinations," Vanessa explained smoothly. "I'll just be a few minutes. Please, make yourselves comfortable." As she stepped out of the exam room, Vanessa could feel Chris's eyes boring into her back. She maintained her casual pace until she rounded the corner, then quickly pulled the note from her pocket, her hands shaking as she smoothed out the crumpled paper. The words hit her like a physical blow. A gun. The situation was even worse than she'd feared. Her mind flashed to Sarah's fearful eyes, to Chris's hand constantly hovering near his jacket, and suddenly everything made terrible sense. "Tasha," Vanessa whispered urgently, spotting her assistant near the supply cabinet. "I need you. Now." Tasha immediately picked up on the urgency in her voice, quickly joining her in the small pharmacy room. Vanessa showed her the note, watching as her assistant's eyes widened in horror. "Oh my God," Tasha breathed, keeping her voice low. "What do we do?" "You need to call 911, Vanessa said, her mind racing through options. "Go to the back office where he won't hear you. Tell them we have a domestic violence situation with a weapon involved. Emphasize that they need to approach quietly. No sirens. We can't risk him knowing they're coming." Tasha nodded, her professional training kicking in despite her obvious fear. "What about you?" "I have to go back in there," Vanessa said, gathering some vaccine vials as a prop. "We need to keep him calm, and by time. Whatever you do, act normal if you pass by the room." As Tasha slipped away toward the back office, Vanessa took a deep breath, centering herself. She could hear Tasha's voice, barely audible, speaking urgently into the phone. "Yes, this is Healing Paws Veterinary Clinic. We have an emergency situation. The suspect is armed." Vanessa forced herself to focus on gathering supplies she didn't actually need, her movements deliberate as she tried to give Tasha enough time to complete the call. Every second felt crucial, but she couldn't rush back too quickly without raising suspicion. When she returned to the exam room, the tension had ratcheted up several notches. Chris was pacing again, his hand repeatedly brushing against his jacket pocket. Sarah sat rigidly in her chair, one hand buried in Max's fur, her knuckles white with tension. "Sorry for the delay," Vanessa said cheerfully, setting her supplies on the counter. "Now, let me just check Max's weight before we proceed. It's important for proper dosing." "This is ridiculous," Chris snapped. "How much longer is this going to take?" "I understand you're eager to finish," Vanessa said, keeping her voice steady as she pretended to make notes in Max's chart. "But proper veterinary care takes time. We want to make sure Max gets everything he needs." She could feel Chris's growing agitation, see the way his hand kept straying to his jacket pocket. The weight of what lay hidden there seemed to fill the room with an invisible but suffocating pressure. Sarah's eyes followed Chris's every movement, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Max responded to her anxiety by pressing closer, his body tense but controlled, as if he understood the delicate balance of the situation. "Sarah," Vanessa said gently, "could you tell me more about Max's symptoms? When exactly did the vomiting start?" Before Sarah could answer, Chris cut in. "We already told you everything. Just give him the damn shot so we can go." "Sir," Vanessa said firmly, "I need to be thorough. Medical histories are crucial for proper treatment. She turned back to Sarah, deliberately excluding Chris from the conversation. Has Max's appetite changed at all? She could see Chris's jaw clenching, his patience wearing dangerously thin. But she needed to buy more time, needed to keep him here until help arrived. Every second they stayed in this room was another second Sarah was safe, another second closer to rescue. Through the wall, Vanessa could hear the normal sounds of the clinic continuing. Phones ringing, clients talking, other animals being treated. The ordinary routine of the day felt surreal now, knowing what was happening in this room, knowing what was at stake. Tasha appeared in the doorway, her face composed but her eyes conveying a silent message to Vanessa. Help is coming. Dr. Bennett, do you need any assistance? No. Thank you, Tasha, Vanessa replied, the exchange carrying layers of meaning beneath its mundane surface. We're almost finished here. Chris's hand moved to his pocket again, and this time it lingered there. His face had taken on a dangerous edge, his patience clearly reaching its limit. No more tests. No more questions. We're leaving. Now. Sir, Vanessa said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I strongly recommend we complete the examination. If we miss something important, I said we're leaving. Chris's voice rose, causing Sarah to flinch violently. Max let out a low growl, the first aggressive sound he'd made since entering the clinic. The tension in the room had reached a breaking point. Vanessa could see the fear in Sarah's eyes, could feel the dangerous energy radiating from Chris, could sense that everything was about to explode. But she couldn't let them leave. Not with Sarah in danger, not with Chris armed, not when help was so close. She needed to keep them here, needed to prevent Chris from dragging Sarah away, needed to buy just a few more minutes. There's one more critical test we need to run, Vanessa said, her mind racing for ways to stall. Max's symptoms could indicate a serious condition. If we don't check now... Enough! Chris shouted, his hand now firmly gripped around something in his pocket. We're walking out that door, and you're not going to stop us. Do you understand? The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Sarah had begun trembling uncontrollably, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Max's growl grew slightly louder, his body coiled with tension. Vanessa's heart hammered in her chest as she tried to think of what to do next. Where were the police? How much longer could she keep this situation from exploding? She could see the darkness in Chris's eyes, could sense the violence barely contained beneath his surface. In that moment, she realized that this wasn't just about buying time anymore. This was about survival. Sarah's life hung in the balance, and one wrong move could have devastating consequences. The clock on the wall seemed to tick in slow motion, each second stretching out like an eternity. Somewhere in the building, help was coming, but in this room, right now, they were trapped in a dangerous dance, each movement, each word potentially triggering a catastrophe. Vanessa took a deep breath, preparing to speak again, to try one more time to keep them here safely. But before she could, a new sound cut through the tension. Distant footsteps in the hallway, moving with quiet but purposeful speed. Chris's head snapped toward the door, his hand tightening around whatever was in his pocket. Sarah's eyes widened with a mixture of terror and hope. And Max, sensing the shift in the room's energy, moved slightly forward, positioning himself between Sarah and Chris. The moment of truth had arrived, and Vanessa knew that what happened next would determine not just the outcome of this day, but possibly the course of Sarah's entire life. She silently prayed that the approaching footsteps belonged to the help they so desperately needed, and that they would reach the room before Chris realized what was happening. The air in the room felt electric, charged with fear and desperation and the potential for violence. But beneath it all, there was also hope. Hope that had begun with a crumpled note slipped into a pocket. Hope that now rested in the hands of those approaching footsteps. Hope that this nightmare might finally be coming to an end. A soft knock echoed from the front of the clinic. Chris's head snapped toward the sound. What was that? Probably just a delivery, Vanessa said calmly, though her pulse quickened as she heard the almost imperceptible sound of multiple footsteps in the hallway. Now, about that vaccine. Something's wrong, Chris said suddenly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You're stalling? The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. Chris's hand emerged from his pocket, gripping a pistol. Sarah's sharp intake of breath was almost lost beneath Max's immediate response. A deep, warning growl that seemed to vibrate through the small room. "Chris," Sarah whispered, terror evident in her voice. "Please don't." "Shut up," he snarled, swinging the gun toward her. "This is your fault, isn't it? You said something to them." Vanessa's medical training kicked in, keeping her movements slow and deliberate as she shifted slightly to place herself between Chris and Sarah. "Mr. Thompson, let's stay calm. There's no need for—" "Stay back," Chris shouted, his hand shaking as he pointed the gun at Vanessa. "All of you, back against the wall. Now!" Max's growl turned into a bark, loud and commanding. The sudden noise made Chris jump, his finger tightening on the trigger. Everything happened at once. The exam room door burst open, 2 police officers rushing in with weapons drawn. "Police! Drop the weapon!" Chris spun toward the door, gun raised. Sarah screamed, and Max, faithful Max, launched himself forward with explosive force. His usual gentle nature transformed into protective fury. His powerful body slammed into Chris's arm just as the gun went off, the shot going wide and embedding itself in the ceiling. The officers tackled Chris before he could recover, the gun skittering across the floor. Max's barking filled the room as Chris fought against the officers, his face contorted with rage. "You're under arrest," one officer announced, forcing Chris's arms behind his back while his partner secured the weapon. The metallic click of handcuffs seemed to break the spell of chaos. Sarah sat trembling in her chair, tears streaming down her face. Max immediately returned to her side, all traces of aggression gone, as he pressed his head into her lap, whining softly. Vanessa felt her own legs shake as the adrenaline began to ebb. She moved to Sarah's side, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now," she said softly. "It's over." More officers flooded into the clinic, securing the scene. Tasha appeared in the doorway, her face pale but relieved. "Sarah? There's a female officer who'd like to speak with you when you're ready. She's from the domestic violence unit." Sarah nodded numbly, her fingers still buried in Max's fur. The dog hadn't moved, his warm presence anchoring her in the aftermath of chaos. As the officers led Chris away, he turned back, his face twisted with hatred. "You'll regret this," he spat. "All of you." Max's response was immediate. Another deep growl, his body tensing protectively. But Sarah, drawing strength from her faithful companion, finally looked Chris in the eye. "No," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner." The fluorescent lights of the examination room cast harsh shadows on Sarah's face as she sat in the cushioned chair, her fingers still intertwined in Max's golden fur. The chaos of the arrest had settled into a heavy silence, broken only by the quiet scratching of Detective Martinez's pen against her notepad. The adrenaline that had coursed through everyone's veins just hours ago was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion that seemed to seep into the very walls of the clinic. "Take your time, Sarah," Detective Martinez said softly, her dark eyes gentle as she watched Sarah struggle to find the words. "Start wherever you feel comfortable." Sarah drew in a shaky breath, her free hand absently rubbing her arm. The movement caused her sleeve to ride up slightly, revealing the edge of what looked like a dark bruise. Max whined softly, pressing his head more firmly against her knee. It started getting really bad a few days ago," Sarah began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Chris lost a big client at work. He came home." She paused, swallowing hard. "He came home different, more different than usual." Vanessa and Tasha stood quietly in the corner of the room, their presence offering silent support. Vanessa noticed how Sarah's fingers tightened in Max's fur with each difficult word, as if drawing strength from his steady presence. "He started throwing things," Sarah continued, her voice growing slightly stronger. "Usually he's careful. Usually he makes sure nobody can see what he—" She trailed off, then with trembling fingers, slowly pushed up both sleeves of her sweater. A collective intake of breath filled the room. Dark bruises in various stages of healing marked her arms, some fresh and purple, others fading to sickly yellows and greens. The pattern of fingerprints was unmistakable. "Oh, Sarah," Tasha whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Vanessa felt her own throat tighten with emotion. Detective Martinez leaned forward slightly, her expression professional but compassionate. "Can you tell me about these bruises? When did each one happen?" Sarah nodded, pointing to the darkest marks on her right arm. "These are from last night. He caught me trying to pack a bag, said I wasn't going anywhere." Her voice cracked. "He grabbed me so hard I thought my arm would break." Max tried to intervene, but Chris kicked him away. "That's when he—" She gestured vaguely toward her ribs, wincing. "We should have medical personnel examine you," Detective Martinez said firmly. "Both for documentation and for your health." "I kept thinking about running," Sarah continued, as if she hadn't heard the detective. "But he took my phone, my car keys. He even disabled the garage door opener. Said if I try to leave again." She shuddered, and Max immediately rose to his feet, placing himself more firmly against her legs. "That's when he showed me the gun. Said he'd use it on Max first, make me watch, and then—" Vanessa felt her chest constrict at the horror of what Sarah was describing. She thought about all the times Sarah had brought Max in for checkups over the past 3 years. How many signs had she missed? How many opportunities to help had slipped by? "This morning," Sarah went on, her voice stronger now, "he had a meeting he couldn't miss. He said I could come with him to take Max to his appointment, but only if I behaved. He thought it would be safe because it was just a vet clinic." A bitter laugh escaped her. "He never thought I'd be brave enough to ask for help. But you were," Detective Martinez said firmly. "You were incredibly brave, Sarah. You took action to protect both yourself and Max. That's no small thing." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Is there a phone I could use? My sister. She's been trying to get me to leave him for months. I need to tell her she was right." "Of course." Vanessa stepped forward, pulling her personal cell phone from her pocket. "Use mine." Sarah's hands shook as she dialed the number. 1 ring, 2 rings, and then, "Hello." A worried female voice came through the speaker. "Emily?" Sarah's voice cracked. "It's me." "Sarah?" "Oh my God, Sarah. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you for days. Are you okay?" The words tumbled out in a rush of panic and relief. "I'm at the vet clinic," Sarah said, tears flowing freely now. "With Max M. You were right. About everything. Chris, he—" She broke off, unable to continue. "I'm coming," Emily said immediately, her voice fierce with protective determination. "Where exactly are you?" "Is Chris?" "He's been arrested." Detective Martinez spoke up, loud enough for Emily to hear. "This is Detective Martinez with the Domestic Violence Unit. Your sister is safe, but she could use your support right now. Text me the address," Emily said. "I'm leaving right now." "Sarah? Stay on the phone with me." "Okay." While Sarah spoke with her sister, Tasha slipped out and returned with a steaming cup of chamomile tea, setting it gently on the table beside Sarah. The gesture, small as it was, seemed to break something loose in Sarah. She began to cry in earnest, still clutching the phone, as Emily's voice provided constant reassurance through the speaker. "I kept thinking about what he might do," Sarah said between sobs, speaking to everyone and no one. "Every time he got angry, every time he raised his voice, I'd watch Max get between us. My brave boy, always trying to protect me. And I kept thinking, what if one day Chris really hurt him? What if one day he followed through on his threats?" "Max knew what he was doing," Vanessa said softly, kneeling beside Sarah's chair. "Dogs are incredibly intuitive, especially about the people they love. He chose to protect you because that's what love does. It gives us the courage to face impossible situations." 20 minutes later, the sound of running footsteps echoed through the clinic. Emily burst into the room, her dark blonde hair windblown, her face flushed from exertion. She took one look at her sister and crossed the room in 3 quick strides, enveloping Sarah in a tight hug. "I'm here," Emily whispered fiercely. "I'm here now, and I'm not letting you go back to him. Ever." Max watched the reunion carefully, his tail wagging slightly as he sensed the positive energy between the sisters. When Emily finally pulled back, wiping tears from her own eyes, she turned to the dog and wrapped her arms around his neck. Thank you, she whispered into his fur. Thank you for keeping her safe until she could get help. Detective Martinez cleared her throat gently. Sarah, we need to discuss your immediate safety plans. Chris will be held without bail given the weapons charge and the documented history of abuse, but we still need to ensure you're protected. She's coming home with me, Emily said firmly. I have a spare room, and my building is secure. Plus, it's pet-friendly, she added, scratching behind Max's ears. That's good, Detective Martinez nodded. But we'll still need to take some precautions. I'll arrange for regular patrol checks of your building, and we'll need to get a protective order in place immediately. As they discussed the logistics of Sarah's protection, Vanessa noticed how the younger woman's posture had changed. Though still shaken, she sat straighter, her chin lifted slightly. With her sister's arm around her shoulders and Max's steady presence at her feet, she looked less like a victim and more like a survivor. Dr. Bennett? Sarah's voice was soft but clear. I need to thank you. Both of you, she included Tasha with a glance. If you hadn't understood what I was trying to tell you, if you hadn't helped stall him, she shuddered. I don't know what would have happened. You don't need to thank us, Tasha said firmly. We're just glad we could help. Still, Sarah insisted, you didn't just save me today. You saved Max too. Chris would have. She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood the unspoken horror of what might have been. That's what community is for, Vanessa said gently. To be there for each other in moments of crisis. To recognize when someone needs help, and to provide it without hesitation. Emily stood up, keeping one hand on her sister's shoulder. We should probably get going. Sarah needs rest, and I want to get her settled before it gets dark. Detective Martinez nodded. I'll have an officer escort you home. And Sarah, she waited until the younger woman met her eyes. You did everything right today. Remember that. You saved yourself, and you saved Max. That takes incredible courage. As they prepared to leave, Sarah paused in the doorway of the exam room. She turned back to Vanessa and Tasha, her eyes bright with tears but also with something else, determination, perhaps, or hope. Will you? She hesitated. Will you still be Max's vet? After all this? Of course, Vanessa said without hesitation. You're both part of our family now. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, we're here. Sarah nodded, a small smile touching her lips for the first time that day. Thank you, she whispered. Then, with Max walking proudly beside her and Emily's arm around her shoulders, she walked out of the clinic and into the beginning of her new life. Vanessa and Tasha watched them go, both women feeling the weight of the day's events settling over them. The bullet hole in the ceiling would need to be repaired, the paperwork would need to be filed, and tomorrow they would return to their regular appointments. But something fundamental had shifted in their understanding of their role as veterinary professionals. You know, Tasha said quietly, when I was in vet tech school, nobody ever taught us about this part of the job. No, Vanessa agreed. They teach us about medicine and surgery, about diagnostics and treatment plans. But sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply be present. Be observant. Be ready to help when help is needed. They began the process of cleaning up the exam room, restoring order to the chaos that had erupted there just hours before. But both women knew that their clinic had become more than just a place of healing for animals. It had become a sanctuary, a place where a woman's silent plea for help had been heard and answered, where a dog's unwavering loyalty had helped write a new ending to what could have been a tragic story. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the Venetian blinds, Vanessa thought about Sarah and Max, hoping they were settling safely into their temporary sanctuary at Emily's apartment. She thought about the bond between humans and animals, how a golden retriever's devotion had given his person the strength to break free from abuse. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new patience, new stories. But today had reminded them of a fundamental truth. Sometimes healing meant more than just treating physical wounds. Sometimes it meant being the bridge between despair and hope, between danger and safety, between the life someone was trapped in and the life they deserved to live. And sometimes, the greatest heroes walked on four legs, their hearts full of unconditional love and unwavering protection for those who needed it most. 6 months had passed since that fateful day at Healing Paws Veterinary Clinic. The late autumn sun cast long shadows through the waiting room windows as Vanessa sorted through her morning appointments. Her eyes lingered on a familiar name, Sarah Miller, 10:30 a.m. These days, Sarah came in monthly for Max's checkups. More frequent than necessary, perhaps, but Vanessa understood the visits were as much for Sarah's peace of mind as they were for Max's health. The transformation she'd witnessed in both of them over the past months never ceased to amaze her. The bell above the clinic door chimed, and Vanessa looked up to see Sarah entering, Max trotting confidently beside her. Gone was the haunted look in her eyes, replaced by a quiet strength that seemed to radiate from within. Her hair, once limp and dull, now fell in healthy waves around her shoulders, and she walked with a straight-backed assurance that spoke of newfound freedom. "Good morning, Dr. Bennett," Sarah smiled, and the expression reached her eyes, something that still caught Vanessa off guard sometimes, remembering the terrified woman from 6 months ago. "Sarah, Max." Vanessa greeted them warmly. "How are you both doing?" Before Sarah could answer, Tasha emerged from the back office, her face lighting up at the sight of their visitors. "Look who's here, and looking so handsome today, Max." Max's tail wagged enthusiastically as he approached the front desk, accepting gentle scratches from both women. His coat gleamed in the morning light, a testament to the care he now received without fear or restriction. "We're doing really well," Sarah said, her hand automatically finding its place on Max's head. "Emily says I'm finally starting to snore again. Apparently that's a good thing. It means I'm actually sleeping deeply enough to relax completely." Vanessa nodded, understanding the significance of this simple achievement. The ability to truly rest, to let down one's guard enough to fall into deep sleep, was a luxury Sarah hadn't known for years. "And how's the new job going?" Tasha asked as she led them to exam room 2, deliberately choosing a different room from the one where everything had happened 6 months ago. Sarah's face brightened. "It's amazing. The graphic design firm is everything I hoped it would be. My supervisor actually asked me to lead our newest client project yesterday." She paused, a small smile playing at her lips. "And they let me bring Max to work twice a week. He has his own corner in my office with a bed and everything." The pride in her voice was unmistakable. After years of Chris belittling her talents and restricting her career choices, Sarah had finally found a workplace that valued both her skills and her need for Max's comforting presence. As Vanessa began Max's examination, she noted how relaxed the dog was, a far cry from the tense, hypervigilant state he'd maintained during those years of protecting Sarah. He still watched his owner carefully, but now it was with contentment rather than concern. "The trial date is set," Sarah said quietly, as Vanessa checked Max's ears. 3 weeks from now. The prosecutor says with the evidence they have, plus my testimony." She took a deep breath. "They're confident he'll be going away for a long time." Vanessa paused in her examination, meeting Sarah's eyes. "How are you feeling about testifying?" "Scared," Sarah admitted, "but also ready. Emily's coming with me, and my victim advocate has been amazing. She's helped me prepare for everything, even practice the kind of questions the defense might ask." She scratched behind Max's ears, drawing strength from his presence. The prosecutor said Max's role in everything, how he protected me, how he helped at the clinic that day, it actually strengthens the case. Shows the level of danger I was in, that even my dog knew I needed protection. Tasha, who had been updating Max's chart, looked up. "Will you be okay seeing him again in court?" Sarah's chin lifted slightly. "I think so. He doesn't have power over me anymore. The therapist I've been seeing, she helped me understand that what happened wasn't my fault. That staying as long as I did doesn't make me weak. I was doing what I had to do to survive." As if sensing the serious turn of conversation, Max pressed closer to Sarah's side. She smiled down at him, her eyes growing distant with memory. "You know, the night before we came here that day, I almost gave up. Chris had been particularly cruel, and I was so tired, so scared. But Max..." She paused, swallowing hard. "Max wouldn't leave my side. Every time I started to lose hope, he'd push his head under my hand, or bring me his toy, or just stay with me. Like he was saying, 'Don't give up. We'll find a way out.'" Vanessa felt her throat tighten with emotion. Dogs have an incredible capacity for empathy. They know when we're hurting, and they do everything they can to help. The domestic violence shelter I volunteer at now, Sarah continued, they're starting a program to help survivors keep their pets. Did you know that something like 48% of women delay leaving their abusers because they're afraid of what will happen to their animals? Vanessa nodded. Since Sarah's case, she'd done extensive research on the connection between domestic violence and pet abuse. The statistics were heartbreaking, but initiatives like the one Sarah mentioned were starting to make a difference. The shelter's working with local veterinarians to provide emergency boarding, Sarah explained, her voice animated. So when someone needs to leave quickly, they don't have to choose between their safety and their pet's life. That's wonderful, Tasha said warmly. Have they found many vets willing to participate? Several, Sarah smiled. Actually, I was hoping, would Healing Paws consider being part of the network? Vanessa didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Send me the information, and we'll get everything set up right away. As she completed Max's examination, Vanessa marveled at how life had come full circle. The terrified woman who had slipped her a desperate note 6 months ago was now helping create safety nets for others in similar situations. Oh, I almost forgot. Sarah reached in her purse and pulled out a small envelope. Emily took this last week. I thought you might like a copy. Inside was a photograph of Sarah and Max at what looked like a local park. Sarah sat on a blanket, her face turned toward the setting sun, laughing at something off camera. Max lay beside her, his head in her lap, looking up at her with absolute adoration. They both radiated joy and peace, a snapshot of healing made visible. We're thinking of starting a blog, Sarah said, watching as Vanessa and Tasha admired the photo. About survivors and their pets. Stories of hope, to show others that there is a way out, that they deserve better, that their animals can have better too. That's a beautiful idea, Vanessa said softly, handing the photo back. Seeing you now, helping others, thriving, it reminds me why we do this work. Sarah tilted her head questioningly. Being a vet? Being human, Vanessa corrected gently. Sometimes the medicine, the procedures, they're the easy part. The real work is in seeing beyond the surface, recognizing when someone needs help, and being brave enough to offer it. I think about that day a lot, Sarah admitted. How everything had to align just right. If Max hadn't been sick, if Chris hadn't had that meeting, if you hadn't understood what I was trying to tell you, she shuddered slightly. But mostly I think about how many others might be out there, right now, waiting for their moment, their chance to escape. That's why what you're doing is so important, Tasha said. Every story of survival gives someone else hope. Every resource you help create makes someone else's path to freedom a little easier. As they wrapped up the appointment, Sarah paused at the door, her hand resting on Max's head. I have something else to tell you both, she said, a slight nervousness creeping into her voice. I've been accepted into a counseling program. Part-time, while I keep working. I want to specialize in trauma therapy, maybe even incorporate animal-assisted healing. Vanessa felt her heart swell with pride. Sarah, that's wonderful. You'll be amazing at it. It's because of Max, Sarah said, looking down at her faithful companion. He showed me what unconditional love really looks like. How healing it can be to have someone who believes in you completely, who stays by your side through the darkest moments. She straightened her shoulders. I want to help others find that kind of strength, whether it comes from a dog, a cat, or just the knowledge that they're not alone. The morning sun had climbed higher, filling the clinic with warm light. Outside, life in the city continued its normal rhythm. Cars passing, people walking, the world spinning on. But inside this room, Vanessa knew they were witnessing something profound. The full circle of healing, where the helped become helpers, where survival transforms into strength. Sarah said, her hand on the doorknob, someone at group therapy asked me recently if I regret those years with Chris. If I wish I'd left sooner. She paused, considering. I told them that while I wish I hadn't gone through the abuse, I don't regret where it led me. Every step of that journey, even the painful ones, brought me here. To this moment, this purpose. Max looked up at her, his brown eyes full of understanding and devotion. Sarah smiled down at him, then back at Vanessa and Tasha. Thank you, she said simply, for being part of our story. for helping us write a new ending. As Sarah and Max walked out into the bright autumn morning, Vanessa thought about all the stories that passed through these clinic doors. Stories of healing, of hope, of the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. Some, like Sarah and Max's, reminded her that sometimes the greatest acts of courage began with the smallest gestures. A note passed in desperation, a helping hand extended without hesitation, a dog's unwavering loyalty. Tasha placed the photo Sarah had given them in a frame on the front desk, where other clients might see it and find hope in its silent testimony. The image of Sarah and Max, bathed in golden light, would serve as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was always a path to healing, always a reason to keep fighting, always a possibility for joy to return. And in exam rooms across the city, other veterinarians would continue their daily work, perhaps now more aware that their role extended beyond treating animals. That sometimes, in the quiet moments between appointments, they might be called upon to become part of someone's journey to freedom, to help write a new chapter in a story of survival and love. For Sarah and Max, that story continued to unfold, each day bringing new adventures, new healing, new opportunities to help others find their way to safety. Their bond, forged in the crucible of survival and strengthened by unwavering loyalty, had become a beacon of hope for others still waiting for their chance to break free. As Vanessa prepared for her next appointment, she glanced once more at the photo on the desk. In it, Sarah's face was turned toward the light, her smile genuine, her eyes clear and bright. Beside her, Max's expression seemed to mirror her joy, his devotion evident in every line of his body. Together, they had not just survived, they had triumphed, transforming their pain into purpose, their fear into freedom, their story into a testament to the healing power of love, courage, and second chances. If Sarah's story touched you, please share it with others, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Every act of bravery matters, and sometimes the quietest cry for help can lead to the most heroic actions. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.